Welcome to the Close Encounter Club. I'm your host, Justin Gearhart. In The Rising Part 1, Jeff Selver shared his extraordinary experiences with non-human intelligences and a consciousness event that changed his life forever. At just 16 years old, Jeff was abducted from a soccer field and taken aboard a craft where he was introduced to the Elder, a being who revealed to him a staggering truth. He agreed to this experience before he was even born. During this encounter, Jeff was shown the afterlife, a vast, luminous realm that defied human comprehension, and was made to understand that his consciousness was part of something far greater than himself. If you haven't listened to that episode, I recommend going back to it and listening to it first before this one. Now in The Rising Part 2, Jeff takes us even further. What began as an inner awakening evolved into more direct physical encounters, including contact on a remote island, the arrival of a mysterious red orb, and the sense that something was watching him, but nothing could prepare him for what happened next. In this episode, Jeff recounts his most intense and harrowing experiences, including full-blown contact with extraterrestrial beings, an abduction that took him aboard their craft, and an encounter that led him to piloting a UFO. He describes a breathtaking journey to a hidden city on Venus, interactions with multiple non-human species, and revelations that challenge everything we know about our reality. Also, this episode does include some not safe for work themes, but don't worry, I'll warn you about it beforehand in the actual episode. I have to admit, I was very skeptical of Jeff's story. His experiences are so far beyond what we consider possible that it's really hard to wrap my head around them. But the fact that he passed a polygraph test, which I posted on our Instagram, combined with recent whistleblower testimonies from Jake Barber about psionic-controlled UAPs, has really made me seriously question the nature of reality. Could Jeff's claims actually be true? Pretty wild stuff. Anyway, I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about this part of the story. This is episode 7. The title is The Rising Part 2, and you're listening to the Close Encounter Club.
I read a book that is about people who live on the faith of God as they travel from place to place with nothing holding them down. And what they found was that when they are open-hearted and they're coming from their pure heart, the universe creates wild synchronicities. Basically helps them. So they end up learning that if we just kind of do this stuff for God, God literally makes magic happen. He feeds us and houses us. And I was like, this is amazing. I had no idea. I was not thinking I would leave my life. That's not my intention. I was a musician. I was in a band. I was in school. I had a girlfriend. I was living my life. Though the year of 1997, before this consciousness event, I'm having tons of psychic experiences. So there was like a culmination of like consciousness events occurring, premonitions that would come true. I would be thinking about someone that would show up around the corner while I'm walking down the street. I have dreams that would be about an event that would unravel during that day, and I had no conscious knowledge of it. So things like that were occurring all throughout the summer, and I just thought I was having this spiritual stuff happen. And only now do I understand it was actually completely related to the alien contact I was having. So it all culminates in this kind of intensity. So once I read this message, my inner spirit changes, and it is that room. It's that white room, but now they've activated that vibration, that frequency, and the book kind of like launched the frequency is what it did. And I have one of the effects that is abnormal is I closed my eyes, my cells in my body had light in them, so I could see, and I was like feeling this extra ecstasy, and I was affected by it, and I had the synchronicities were going off in my world in these wild ways telling me to leave my life. And it just sounded so crazy. I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't help but notice my own heart was like, do this, do this, do this. My heart kept telling me to do it. My heart kept repeating. My heart kept telling me, and all the glows and all the power I would ever feel I got always was aligned with leaving. And this kind of synchronicity to leave. about 2 or 3 months, I eventually succumbed to it, and I left. So I resisted it for a long time.
Sorry, when you say leave your life, you mean travel, like
But
leave what you know your life. Sorry, go
but
ahead.
everything. So I actually assumed I actually thought I was leaving everything. It was a bit traumatic. So I actually thought I'm leaving society. My heart is telling me to do this. I don't understand why. I got rid of all my music equipment, got rid of all my CDs, left my house I was staying in at the time. I was like, sorry guys, my friends, I'm leaving everybody. I don't know what this is about, but I'm doing it. I cut up all my accounts, all my banks, everything. I had no grid. I was not attached to the grid in any way. And then
so literally leaving all material life.
Yeah.
Just
for this
going
like spiritual
somewhere.
thing going on. Yeah, I'm going somewhere for this spiritual thing that I can't figure out what it's about. And when I do, right away, my parents are like, "Hey, how about I transfer the car to you? We were thinking about doing that anyway." And I was like, "Okay." I literally thought I was walking out the door with a backpack, and so right away I do have synchronicities where there's this kind of like protection thing going on. So okay, that worked. And then right away, as soon as I start traveling, I find it very uncomfortable living, and I start living in the car. So that ends up being the kind of the rescue, is I end up living in the car for a year as I travel around, because it only lasted a year, the car did. Okay, so I'm traveling, and I've been traveling now so I left February 21st of 1998, and February, March, April. So about 6 weeks, I think. I decided to go to an island here in Vancouver, and I'm backpacking, and I'm still so insecure, man. I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm starting to embrace the adventure. I left my car behind and I hitchhiked to this island that's several islands in. It's really hard to get to, but I heard to go there. It's kind of fun. And I camp on the beach, and it's nighttime. And when I'm there, I'm eating my dinner at nighttime around this fire on the beach, and an object flies up to my left, kind of like I'm looking down, and all of a sudden there's this object, and I'm like, whoa. I swear, because it was so odd, it was like an angle. It came in at an angle and then stopped. But it's the color of a flare, really bright red. There's no internet at the time. Well, there was, but it was not the way it is now. And, I didn't have this knowledge, so I assumed it was a flare. I didn't know what I was looking at. And I'm staring at it, and I'm like, okay, it's got to be a flare. I'm thinking logically, it's just something. I'm eating, and it's just sitting there. And it's close, and it's lighting up the forest below it. And I'm not understanding what I'm looking at. And it starts freaking me out. I'm like, what is this? And then it lowers. It like smoothly just goes into the forest. And I'm like, okay, good. It's gone. But now I actually feel that something's in the forest. I'm kind of weirded out. Part of me wanted to go explore. She was like, I want to go see what that is. And I feel it could be something that I don't understand, and I want to know. Part of me says, no, don't worry about it. And I actually was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to bed. And I decided to go to bed. And when I do, the last thing I do before I go in the tent is I look into the forest, and I'm like, feels like something is in the forest. And I listened to my intuition, and it said, I'll be safe. I said, okay, I'll be safe. And I went to bed. And I woke up in the middle of the night having what I actually called it. I said out loud, they were here. And what I knew was something was associated with that consciousness event. I just called it a faceless presence, as if something was associated with it I couldn't label or name. And all I knew was that presence was there that night. And so I didn't know what that meant either. You only assume it's all psychic or astral. You don't imagine it's something as intense as real physical contact. And so I assumed that. It was late at night, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. I get out of my tent, and there's a woman like 30 feet away. And I'm off the beach, just up from the beach on the field. And she is standing on a rock, and the wind is blowing and her hair is blowing, and she's looking out at the moon. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what was that object about? Why did I have that weird dream? And then now what is she doing here? And I'm getting up to urinate, and I quickly do my business, and I'm trying not to scare her. But I'm weirded out by her, and I'm not clear what she's doing so close to my tent. And I don't want to freak her out, and because I'm a man. I think it was in my underwear in the middle of the night, and so I quickly get back to my tent, and that's the end of it. In the morning, I feel like that red object I saw was on the field, and I could feel it. I could just feel that object was on the field, and I walked through the field, trying to why do I feel like that object was here? What's going on? And what it does is it gives me a confirmation that my traveling was for a reason. Something happened that night. I didn't know what it was. It felt mystical. It felt spiritual. Now there's a reason. Something is going on. Spirits know I'm here and know I'm traveling. This was for a purpose. I don't know what it is, but there's a purpose. And so it just gave me a feel of confidence. But it turned out it was a full-blown contact event. When I signed up for this, I had no idea with the aliens, 16, I had no idea what it would be. The memories I have are broken of how I got out of the tent. But when I get out of the tent, I'm in my clothes. And it kind of still doesn't make sense to me. There's something weird going on with the bodies that they are able to control. And basically I'm waking up outside of my tent. And as I'm outside the tent, that red object is actually on the field now. It is on the field. It's basically shining bright lights. It's kind of very colorful lights. And I'm terrified. And so I'm not aware of my past memories. All I know is I'm freaking terrified. But what's happening is I'm also saying in my head, I was right. There was some other presence involved. And so I'm actually solving. I feel like it's putting that part of my mind to rest. So I'm saying, yeah, something was involved, and now it's coming to take me away, and I'm going away forever, and I'm not clear what's going on. And then the lights turn off, the door opens up, like a ramp comes down, an entity, a thing is floating out, and what it looks like to me is a floating skull, and it's absolutely terrifying to me, and I'm freaking out, and now I'm frozen, and I can't move. And then halfway through it floating, it opens the memory. So it's controlling this whole thing. And all of a sudden, all of it comes back, all of it. Everything that happened, everything's there. I'm accessible to the memories.
Even the stuff that happened in your first contact, like the fact you were on the ship, all that stuff.
All the agreement is there, all the impressions of them, all the feelings of them. I could access them. And I begin bawling. I began crying. And it's actually kind of why I think the entities are operating outside of duality. You know what I mean by that? By duality, that we're in the dimension of duality where you experience the opposite of happiness and sadness, hot and cold, male, female. You know, the universe is filled with this kind of duality. The white room is this utter bliss. And now that the experiment got initiated and we're into a new phase with the entities, I'm the most lost. I'm in such pain. And it's this inverse. It's like this something reversed that happened. So I'm bawling from realizing, this is what it was. Like, this is what we were doing. Like, that's this thing like me leaving my life, and that was it. Like, it's like, that's what you were going to do to me. I thought it would be something else. I thought maybe I'd be famous or something. I didn't know what it would be. And then you're learning it's this crazy experiment. I was utterly alone, but also something really traumatizing. If I don't figure this out, then the guy who's got no memory of the contact events is going to be traumatized. And it might damage him. Like, it might last a long time, damage. And you're terrified to watch these moments occurring as they're unraveling. And so I'm actually crying pretty hard, like really, really guttural crying. And the entity has landed now, and she's in front of me. And her eyes are just projecting compassion and compassion and compassion.
Was that the elder that you saw in your first contact, or was it a different entity?
I basically am with the elder, not all of them, but she's the main entity. And especially when there's hard moments, she ends up being there for me. It's kind of a weird,
like a motherly thing.
Motherly, yeah, you know it, yeah. And so that's her here, and she was the floating skull. So I'm confused when I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know who she is, and then I'm terrified, and it's a floating skull. And it turns out her face, just the way it looked in the dark and the light, that she was actually a gray alien with the big eyes, is what it was. And then she puts herself in front of me, and so she had floated. It was actually really interesting. I don't see that too often either. And she had floated up, and then she lands in front of me. She said, "We will have your back. Like, we'll be there, and we'll have your back." In my fifth contact event, she said that. So while I'm crying in front of her, I said, "You said you'd have my back." I was like,
"You're pleading to her."
Yeah, pleading. Like, what happened? You said you'd be there, because I didn't feel it was a mess for me, and it turned into this whole traumatic thing. And didn't feel like I discovered my soul. It was this intense thing that was just traumatized me. And though it was very beautiful, it's true, but it was combined with this insanity. She says, we were there. You would have felt us. And of course, what does happen is they have this ability to be invisible, right? This kind of invisible presence. And it's true. There were moments where I felt them. And that's why I said there was a faceless presence to this. There was moments where there were synchronicities, and I did see I saw a weird meteor that aligned with my thinking at one time. So there was weird synchronicities. There was a feeling something was trying to talk to me and tell me to go. I didn't know there'd be an alien. I assumed it's a spirit or something. And you have no knowledge. So that's it. She's like, we were there. You would have felt us. And I'm like, you don't know what to do with that. I'm broken. So I start crying more. She actually holds my hand, and it's this bawling that is like, I've never done this. I've never been in such joy ever before. And I've never bawled as hard as this either. So I've never been in such joy as I'd been in the first contact event as ever before. And I've never bawled as hard as this either in this 8th contact event. So it's such a strange, like I was in such depth of like,
there's a duality there too, a little bit of both like high end, opposite ends of the spectrum in the most extreme way. It sounds like.
And it's kind of interesting as a human, it might be very true that you can't have that experience without having its opposite.
Yeah.
So if there's something maybe very wisdom about that, like some kind of wisdom to that in the moment, they can't address that, and they never do. They just try to handle me in the moment. And so I'm bawling, and it turns out she grabbed my hand, and I'm so into the bawling, and it's so rocking my soul. With my eyes opening and my tears coming down, I realize we're floating. So she'd taken my hand, and there's no sense of me floating. I'm just now in this cocoon thing, and it's being picked up, and we're moving to the object that's on the field. And then she puts me down, and she goes inside.
I'm sorry. I have to ask a question that might be a weird question, but I have to ask it. What did her hand feel like? Did you have a sense of? Did it feel just like a human hand, or was the texture of her hand different in any way?
Oh, well, it would have been thinner. Yeah, it definitely was thinner. But it doesn't feel like a human hand. No. But I'm in too much emotional distraught but it was definitely the thin kind of hand. Now, yeah, you're having me analyze that. It's interesting.
I'm sorry. I was just curious because it's one of those moments too, when you said it, it just seemed like a very like intimate moment. Like,
it is,
take my hand and follow me.
Yeah.
And I just for some reason I had to ask that question, and I don't know why. It seemed.
Yeah, and it's
fascinating.
It's hard to even say if I felt that it was cold or hot even. Yeah, definitely the thinness of her hand and the kind of maybe fragility has not that I actually think it is fragile, but it has a sense of being fragile. Like there may be like smaller bones or thinner bones or something. I don't know. But that's pretty much it. The emotions are dominating it. Not just that, there's a slight bit of uncomfort that she's holding my hand, like just subconsciously.
I could imagine that, yeah.
Largely because you did this to me, right? And I'm like you're doing this to me, and now like you're taking me away. And you again, you're not the terror, but there is a level of uncomfort with what's going on. I can imagine that. They did this, and I didn't really know when I'm young, and not that I really fully thought that way, but there's a part of me that's thinking, like, I put my trust into them, and now this is what's happened, and I don't know the outcome, so I'm just hoping it's for the best. But not just that, I'm out of control. Like they're in control. I can't really change.
You have to surrender.
You have to surrender to the situation, exactly, and that's exactly what was going on here. So, yeah, she put me down.
She was going to lead you towards the ball you said that was in the field. Yeah. I think, correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the orb. Yeah, the ball. That's right. It was a giant, like about 20-foot tall metal object, is what it was.
Oh, so it was. Oh, wow. So it was. I was picturing something small, but you're saying it's a legitimate craft.
Yeah, it was
almost.
It was like a craft. Yeah, it was a 20-foot tall craft. Yeah, and it was a ball, of silver, like a metallic object. Yeah. And then we get inside, and there's two tall aliens, two tall medical beings. I call them the medical beings because they do kind of ooze that feeling of being medical. And everyone is projecting all this concern and care, and they're really like trying to make me feel better. And there's medical, so it's a curved inside, and there's two medical beds that curve. They're projected enough that the bed doesn't curve, but they're up against a curved wall. and I'm sitting on it. I sit back on it, and then one takes control. The medical being, and I guess we start kind of climbing, and then I'm like, what happens now? And it's largely because I think we failed, and I think I failed, so I have like guilt about it. And she says, "You live out your life." So for her, they're not attached to what happened, and I'm attached to what happened. And but I'm like, at one point I ask, or the whole dialogue, of course, is in the book, but to the word for word, but it is framed like, what happens now? Like you live out your life. But I'm like, but I can't. Basically, that's the point. Like, I can't live out my life. I'm lying to myself. Like I know the answer. I know the answer of what happened to me already. This it's April, and this consciousness event happened in December. I need to know what happened to me. I need to know where this comes from. And she's like, we can't do that right now, but it will all come together in time. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand. Like, none of this made sense at this point. I knew we were building up to something and that would initiate it, but I don't know why they're in my life anymore at this point. What's going on? We did this experiment. Why are you in my life? And so she's saying it'll come together in time. So, but right now you just have to deal with this. Like, I don't understand. It doesn't make why, that's how it's left. And so I'm having an emotional, dramatic dialogue with this gray alien who's all detached and is just trying to give me comfort and peace, but that's it. She's not really helping me with anything, but she's definitely trying to feel comforting for me. As I'm kind of crying and not really knowing how to handle it, through the screen, we're going up into space, and I can see a base. So there's like a black object through the screen, and we are moving into something. And then it seems like we move through a wall of this object. So instead of a bay door opening or something, we move inside, and it appears that we've gone into a hangar. And then the craft lands, and then the door opens, and then the two gray aliens get out, the two tall ones. And I'm actually saying, I can't do this. What's going on? I can't do this. They have some interesting things that they do. Again, it might be said that she did some kind of, maybe this was manipulation. I don't think it's manipulation. But she projects a light out of her eye. It's like she has some kind of like tech abilities that can impact the human brain. The gist of what the feelings are you didn't do anything wrong. Like, you put together in time, and it's okay. Like, we're with you while you do. We're here for you while you do. And so that's the gist of it. It was like kind of a really intense energy that was like coming out of her eye. So it's not words, nor was it telepathy fully. It's like these really intense impressions that she's putting into my head. And it did leave me with this impression of like, okay, I'm traveling now, and I'm doing this kind of really hobo thing. And these are the only people who know what's going on. And these are the only ones who can maybe help me. So if something happens to me, so there's a sense of like trying to make sense of it, and you're like, okay. And so it kind of rectifies. It's like, and I think what she's doing is she's rectifying some of the emotions, like the chemical processes in my brain. So she's trying to make me feel better by, correcting my brain, basically. It's with these imprints of like, okay, we're here for you, and you didn't do anything wrong. And so it's really intense. And then we get out of the craft. And when we do, we're in a hangar. It's I always want to call it a field of UFOs. There are different types of objects, but we're in a base.
Different shapes too,
yeah.
and
different shapes. Yeah, different shapes. Yeah, we're in a base, and it's like a field, and it's like a base station, some kind of station, and so there's like a lot of people here, and then there's a lot of objects spewed throughout this kind of area, and there are some. I'll come back, so I'll end up like kind of remembering these shapes, but yeah, there are some strange objects that are like black diamond, not diamond, but pointed, not a tube, things with nose cones. It's kind of weird. And there was like an object, like a longer object with a nose cone.
How large were they?
Some of them were large. Some of them were, it was so big. It felt equivalent to be a football stadium. Not that, I think maybe just the size of the football, maybe not the seats of a football stadium, but it felt quite large. And then, there's several layers of like objects. And then we're walking down a main row. And so immediately I'm in this kind of different state with them. And I'm starting to be like, oh yeah, this is lots of fun. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So let's pretend that didn't happen. What happened back there? And now I'm in this other place with them. And this is really amazing. And then we get out.
And do you think that what she manipulated, like your brain chemistry, do you think that maybe is perhaps why you were kind of feeling like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. I'm going to see these crafts and things like that. Do you think that possibly was connected?
I think not repressed, but because repression would actually be a different emotion. I think it rectifies. I think she was rectifying. I think that's what it is. I think she's rectifying the emotions. So then I can actually be in a proper state while I'm on the craft, while I'm with them. Because there is let's go back to the vibration. And I can't be in that vibration when I got all this emotional, mud with me. And then so she's rectifying it. And now I'm able to be in the state with them.
It's almost like mindfulness in a way. Cause it's like when you're typically when you're in an emotional state, you're either thinking about the past, thinking about the future, you're not in the present moment or in that vibration. And it almost seems like you said, she rectified that, and now you're like, okay, I'm in the present now. Like what happened before, I'm in the present now. Look at these insanely sweet crafts.
Yeah.
Like that you're kind of in the present moment is what it sounds like.
Yeah. And that is very accurate. You have to, it's a consciousness state that the human brain has a tendency to be emotional, and you have to be out of that to be in their environments almost. That's exactly what's
in the present.
Yeah, to be present. Yeah. There's a hangar bay door that's large, and we get out and we turn left, and we turn left again. So we kind of made it to this end hallway, and there's a transporter that's at the end of it. And it's kind of down this like small hallway. We get on it, and so she's first. It's like a singular transporter for individual people or entities. So she's first, and then I get on it. I just follow her. Then now we both come out on another hallway, and as we do, Earth is to my left through a window. And so I didn't really understand this until I see this window, that I'm like, I'm in space. I'm in outer space, and it's like really crazy. And now there's like a viewpoint of Earth, and she's not talking. We just we're walking. I'm pretty certain I see an entity here. I'll actually analyze later on because I'll keep seeing these entities. But yeah, I do. I see like a person, or like I don't consider it a person, but it was a humanoid entity. And that's the first time I'm like, oh, like what's going on here? And it's not a gray alien either. She had told me in the last contact event before I went traveling about like some kind of federation of planets or some kind of agreements, like entity, like civilizations or entities that work together. So there's this idea of a collaboration. Here I am now with her, and there's these other there's another different type of alien. And so I'm just making assumptions. I'm like, is this
like a different, was it a different species? Like it wasn't a gray?
Yeah, it wasn't a gray.
Wow.
I wish I could name the color. Not Caucasian, but maybe yellowish, like a yellowish skin, and much more defined facial features. That looked very odd. Like and thin, and that's the other part. The thin and bizarre facial features and yellow skin, and I don't really understand her. And then I didn't ask questions, and so we get into this room. We go left. And when I get into the room is like got a red light on it, like a red light. It's like a not as intense as a photographic dark room, but kind of similar, but not so dark that I can't see. There are 2 rows of computers. Stage to the right of me my first human gray alien hybrid I would see, and 2 gray alien bodies. So they're all bodies, and they're in tubes, and the tubes are like leaned back a little bit. And she tells me to take my clothes off, and she tells me to get up on the stage. And I do. And I'm so altered by the consciousness event that happened to me, and now the state I'm in here, knowing that this is all tied to the white room and being this orb. It's so bizarre that there's not the typical embarrassment I would have done at that age. I'm like not embarrassed or not even concerned to be unclothed in front of this entity. So it's very weird to me presently that that's the case. And that says everything about the state I was in. And so she wants me on the stage. and this like a glass casing come over top of me or comes around me, and then a beam goes slowly down, like a very thick beam, and there's no feel of damage, but something is kind of analyzing. And then she asked Kira telepathy, what's going on? And she says, what we did was a great event, and we're recording it for our databases. So the rising, this consciousness thing they did. And now for them, it's a great experiment, and they're analyzing, and they're taking all the information from it. This beam finishes, and then I step down, and she shows me, it's like a plastic clear, like it'd be the size of an iPad, but it was clear and plastic, and there was an image of me. And then on it was all this other information. I could kind of read the information. It was like the script now that I had. I could read the script a little bit. I'll just say that. And it was about me, and I could see like some version of Earth was mentioned on it. And there's all this like detail about like molecular structure and stuff, and some chemical processes and things in there. And then when I turned the hologram, it was my nude body, but when I turned it, you could see the organs. So like it was all high quality, picture perfect,
like an MRI almost, but
with all the colors,
way more advanced.
Yeah, with all the colors. Yeah, so it's not even the black; it's not even shaded or anything. It's the colors of my organs, and you can see it all in the detail. I'm like, wow, fascinating, and I'm very grateful. Like, thank you for showing me that. That's really wild.
What did the computers look like? How do you know that they were computers? Did it look like our computers, or was it not even anywhere like?
Yeah, the room reminded me of NASA. NASA launch, like they had like rows of computers connected, and they had screens. So yeah, there were rows there, and there were 2 rows, and they were short, maybe like for 3 people each or something. What's fascinating, just a side point, I'll be in several rooms that are clearly for biological purposes that have stages. And you're like, why would they do this? Like, why would they? So it's like they have a stage to analyze bodies on, and like put a body up there, and then they would do analysis on it on a stage, and the computer's down below. Very interesting. And so I'll have that in a second contact event. So it's a really weird, some consistencies that are repeatedly in my story.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the story.
Hey, it's Justin here. Before we continue, this is the part of the episode that I want to give a quick content warning. The next section of Jeff's experience includes mature themes, including a deeply personal and unsettling encounter of a sexual nature. If this is a sensitive topic for you, feel free to skip ahead. This part of the story ends around the 40-minute, 45-second mark. Listener discretion is advised.
What happens next is the rated R part. I'm okay talking about it. It helps people when I do, actually. Are you okay that I talk about it?
Yeah. Listen, again, I'm trying to get to the truth, so I'm sure I've heard more graphic things than what you're about to say. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So she says, go to that room over there. There was a side room. There was the door was open. And so there was the stage, and then to the left of the stage was this door, an open door. And she said, go in there. And so I go in there, and the door shuts behind me. The room got these light bands, very soft tone and not hard to look at, but there are light bands all around and like layered up. And there was a bed to the left, and it's like not too high, but a little bit high. And the bed is molded to the wall, and it's got this kind of soft fabric. The door opens, and I turn around, and it's the hybrid that I saw in the tube. So now it's coming out, but I know she's in it. So she's transferred her essence from her gray body to this body, like a spirit, or like, I guess as the orb, maybe she pulled her orb out and put it in here now.
When you say it's a hybrid, are you saying it looks human, or does it not look human?
It had like human features. It had like a shoulder structure that looked definitively human, like a body mass that looked definitively human. yet had a bald head and had a skin tone that matched hers, a little bit kind of greenish gray. Had dark eyes that were oddly spaced, like they were trying to be humans, but not. So it'd look a little bit further apart. Yeah, so it's kind of a weird body actually. And it feels it. I didn't have these ideas at the time, but it definitely in the present 100% felt like emerged of the two genetics. And she tells me, well, sit down. And she's walking up to me. And the gist of it is that she can control these things in my brain. So psychically, she controlled for me to get into the state for what was to happen physically, not emotionally, but to physically make a man ready. And so she was like push buttons, basically, is what she's doing. And then she gets on top of me, and there's no motion. And then again, she's pushing buttons in my brain, and then that happens. But what does also happen that is fascinating to analyze these years later, reminiscent of the White Room. So it is kind of like this. We spun together in the room, in the orb, in the White Room as orbs back in the first contact event. We spun together. And when we come together in this unit, in this kind of feeling, and you end up being in this kind of bliss. So it's kind of like that maybe was gray alien version of sex or something. I don't know.
Interesting.
And then when they do it physically, there is it's almost like if I closed my eyes, I could have imagined that moment again, and we spun around, and then the climax was like the merging together. Yeah, it's very interesting. And then that happens, and I'm stunned. Now, to preface this, again, more detail because my story is that complex. In the 7th contact event, before this one, before I went traveling, she actually said, "We're going to need your genetics. We're going to need your semen." And there's an idea here that it did this consciousness event and it changed my body. Right? They did analyze. It took a hologram of my body, so what I just explained a couple minutes ago. So it did something to my DNA, and so the idea that they now want it, I don't put that together until much later that these were connected. All of a sudden now, this agreement that I didn't know was going here went here. So I was stunned with what, though even the way she did it was kind of so wacky. Like she'd put herself on me. And then once the climax happened, it's done. She gets up. She actually thanks me. Thank you for that. She walks out and I the memory of this event was coupled with sitting there at the edge of the bed. I stood up. I sat up, and I was holding on to the edge of the bed, and I'm sitting there like I don't know how I have emotions. Like it's disturbing. It's disturbing is what it is. It's disturbing. There's no way to frame it any other way than it's disturbing. And you're just like, okay, that was disturbing. And then I actually went through an intuitive process about it. Like, what happened, and am I okay? There was just a part of my heart, a part of my consciousness that's saying it's okay. It's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, don't like. And also, I gave it to them. They wanted it, and I gave it to them. So, okay, fine, we're done.
It's also so otherworldly too, because it's, when you're having intercourse as a human being, there's a direct motivation to do so, whether it be reproduction, whether it be love, whatever it may be. That's very intuitive to us. But I would imagine in that moment, maybe now no spoilers, but I bet you in that moment you're just like why? Like, it probably felt so unnatural for you because you just don't know. Maybe you didn't know that. Did you know their motivation at the time, or was it just you just knew that they wanted it and you participated?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and so there's a really weird thing, and it's really bizarre. I confirmed I'm not my body. Right? I'm my consciousness. The entire thing was my spirit, and the entire interaction was spirit. Because my spirit was actually okay with it, because it actually, you merge in a very powerful way. But then there's the human element, the very physical body element, with which I was also too, because as a teenager, I wasn't being trained spiritually anywhere. So in any way, so I identified it as the body. So you're having a conflict, like, wait, so we were kind of the soul thing, and the soul thing seems to be okay with it. The body part seems to be like, whoa, what the hell was that? That was disturbing. And what do I do with it? I don't even know what to do with this. And it created the emotions of discomfort in me anyway. So at that point, I was like, I was uncomfortable.
It's another duality too, because like you said, it's like, physical and spiritual.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of the ways to understand contact is to understand it as a maybe that they are aware of the duality of the human life. They might actually give someone something amazing while almost simultaneously giving them the struggle that goes with it. So I walk back out, and when I do, the hybrid is again back into the tube, and she is getting up from the chair as if she had like put her normal body into the chair, and then maybe it was slumping when I wasn't aware of it, and then she took the hybrid and she was in the hybrid. Now she put it back, and then she's like getting up from the chair, so as if she had disabled her normal body. And when I walk past the hybrid, I say, "What are you going to do with that?" Implying, the seed. And she says, "We're going to make babies from it." All very casual and excited, actually. We're going to make babies from it. It's like, okay. And she tells me to get my clothes back on, and I get my clothes back on, and we step out, and I see more of these humanoids, and like one's walking by, and she has like a tablet in her hand, and it's a she. It looks definitive like a female. I don't know what races these are or what's going on. I just know I know is this is the base I'm in. And then I look down the hallway, and there's that window I passed of Earth. Maybe it's the uncomfortable emotions, and maybe that I gave them this seed that I'm like, I just take control and I want to walk over, and now I want to take it. There's a little bit of me that's like, okay, I gave that to you. Now I need to be getting something. So I like walked over to the window, and I'm looking down at Earth, and I'm having this like holy moment and, transformation to like look at Earth in this way. And it's low Earth atmosphere. Low Earth orbit. So this will be the orbit of satellites. And I've kind of like went back and looked, and Google Earth and tried to figure out the distance, the heights and stuff. And then from behind me, she's coming up, and I can feel like gratefulness. She's projecting gratefulness. She says to me, "We're grateful for the work you've done. What would you like in return?" I want to know where you live. Like, I want to know like where you're from and who you are and where you're from. And she says, "We live on Venus." She would obviously know my word for the planet Venus. So when she does it, she puts up her hand. We live on Venus. This doesn't make any sense to me. Even at that time, I knew what Venus was. I was into astronomy and stuff. So I knew what planet Venus was, and that's not making any sense to me. Okay, we're going to go see Venus. So we go down one of the elevators, and I can hear her telepathically communicating with someone. Like as we're walking, as if she's like remote, a phone call almost, but just telepathy. And she's talking with someone, and we come around the corner. We stop at the hangar bay door entrance, and a humanoid, pretty much a person that looks like a human, walks up. He's like sandy, like brownish hair, and he looks like me. He looks like not like me. He looks like my age. I'm at that time 20. He looks like a 20-year-old humanoid. He's wearing like a bluish coveralls, and she's like, "Do you want to show him where we live?" He's like, "Yes." And he's open-hearted and super friendly. He's smiling. So he's got facial expressions, unlike the gray alien. So that's it. So he's like, "Okay." And then we go together, and we leave her. So now it's just me and the humanoid. And he's got this very friendly feel. And so, yeah, let's go. And so we're walking.
Is he talking to you, or is it still all telepathic?
All telepathic. Yeah, the entire thing is telepathic with impressions and feelings. And and the same thing where it's not really structured, clear language. Sometimes sometimes just the do that or this or hey, yeah, sure. And you can feel those feelings.
Like the energy. Okay.
Yeah, an energy projected out. Yeah. And so we're walking down the pathway, and there's a disc, a UFO, a quote unquote disc, and it's got the ramp down, and then he gets in, and I follow him, and I'm looking around in amazement at the environment and the height of the place, and it's like maybe 300 feet high. Like it's just a very tall, massive, hangar bay entrance. And then we get into this UFO, and it's a small environment, and there's a chair, and then he gets on the console, and I sit on the chair, and he says, "No, you're going to drive." And I'm like,
No way.
"Oh my God." And so he gets on this console, and he puts his hands on this pad that has imprints for him. It's got a handprints on him on this pad, this metallic silver pad. And then he puts his hands on it. Craft levitates up, but there's no feeling of movement in the craft. It's not too unlike being in your own living room and watching a video game, and there's no movement. You don't feel any movement. So you're just watching this thing on the screen. It moves up, and then it goes poof, and it fires through the wall. There's no hangar bay door opening. There's just, you go through the wall. And then we are out in space, and the craft is now sitting there, and he lets go, and he says, "Now you get on it. You put your hands here, and you look on the screen where you want to go, and then you think to go there." I'm convinced now that the screen itself actually was receptive to your visual perception. Like it could feel what you're looking at. And so when you're looking at what it can see, then it knows to fire at a certain location. So I put my hands on it, and there is a definitive feeling that you're extended out. Your awareness is now a compass accompanying this object to its rim. And that's it. I looked at a spot in the middle of space. Now, there was one thing where I actually said, "I don't know where I'm going." And he actually straightens us out. So we're going to Venus. So there's this, what's really fascinating is the memory you have to know where Venus is in the solar system. And Venus could be anywhere in the solar system at April of 1998. And I actually drew it, and it matched. So it's to the right of, or it was to the right of Earth, but in front of Earth. So, it could have been behind the sun. It could have been anywhere, right? So it's directly April of 1998. It's just to the right of Earth. And when we get out, that's what happens. It's just to the right of Earth, and it's this white ball. Basically, when I fly there, so when I'm flying there, I'm flying at a spot in space. So I'm just looking at a spot in space. In between there, we do these kind of shots, but we're doing these shots as we're going. I am doing these shots as we're going towards Venus. So he wants me to just play around in space. But what's fascinating too is you think that this would be like Star Wars, where you're coasting, you're flying up and down and maybe doing loops or something. That's not what it was. It was actually shots. So you look at a location in space, and then you're instantly there. You fire forward, poof, only to learn also, once all that was come out and I knew this happened and I started talking publicly about it, yes, actually, there is some physics behind it that the scientists, those who study these things, do believe that crafts actually instantaneously move through space without it being a trajectory. It's an instantaneous flight through space. So that's exactly what I experienced here. It's just these shots. And I do about 4 of them. And I'm laughing and then, oh my God, this is exciting.
Probably sick. You're driving a flying saucer for crying out loud. That's amazing. I'm like a dog. I'm like, oh my God, you have this a super excitement about it, and this is amazing. And then we actually get to Venus. So there's this one shot, and now we're just off outside Venus, and I don't want to go any further. I'm actually terrified of doing something wrong. So he takes control, and then we actually do coast, kind of fly down. We fly into the atmosphere, and Venus was white. I know that the images are orange or yellow. I've had to do my own research behind this because apparently that's actually with filters. They're kind of clear, those images we see, and there actually is white in the atmosphere, and it can look like a snowball. And that's what it looked like to me. And we came out at a certain angle. The sun was reflecting off of it, and also very fascinating too. The screen mutes the sun, because we were actually flying toward the sun in some degree. So it's had an auto mute or auto mute of the brightness. Very interesting. And then we fly into the atmosphere, and we're flying down, and we're going through white, and we're going through orange and yellows, and then we come out, and there's no life. It's a rocky environment. So I'm literally flying through Venus, and I'm literally having this is the time of my life. What's going and it's small moments like this that make these times worth it, right? It's
it makes worth it not fighting back with them. It made it worth it to go through crazy experiments with them. In the moment, that's how I'm thinking about it. They kept making things hard on me, but in this moment, it keeps making the next one okay and the next one okay. As we're flying in, or ends up through the screen, and he's controlling, there is a city on the horizon. We're flying up to it. Lo and behold, there's a full city on Venus. I can't see its size because there's a lot of haze in the atmosphere, and I can't see past a lot of the thick haze. But we come up, and there's these kind of like landing pads outside. The craft lands, and the door opens up. And I'm assuming we're on an inhabitable environment, which I was trained that is what it is. And he walks out, and I actually say, can we breathe this air? He's almost chuckling. The air is normal. He doesn't explain anything to me. And I get outside, and I can be in the environment. I'm like just a human like this in the environment. I'm convinced I'm phased. I'm convinced there's some kind of, I've done all my weird research on this, like missing 411. Do you know missing 411?
No.
David Play's missing 411.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes.
Yeah, there's weird cases where people, it seems like some of them are people who go into another dimension in the forest. Like there might be kids.
Yes.
And then they describe that they're there, but no one can see that they're there. So they're like kind of phased out in a weird way. And that's what I think is going on here, where there's some kind of like phasing. And if you're phased, you maybe can see the environment, but you don't interact with it. And would make also sense to why there's a city, because the city itself might be phased. So human tech can't pick it up. And so there actually is a city. You just don't know it.
You just don't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm in the state that allows me to be here. And so and so you're outside in the environment where it should be apparently 400 degrees Celsius. The heat is so extreme. And the pressure,
like that,
the pressure is like being 7 miles under the ocean, something like that. Yeah, it's like extreme. And there's nothing. There's no feeling. I don't have any nothing. And not just that, I actually see like moisture or some kind of steam like coming off the rocks and stuff. And it is a weird impression as we're walking off of this dock that I'm really close to the rocks. And there was kind of almost an impression that the city's floating or not. The city's not embedded into the environment the way our cities are embedded into the environment. The roads are right into the dirt, right? Like this is like a city's like maybe could have been raised even maybe a foot, an entire city. So just sitting there floating.
Almost like a hologram in a way, but something you can touch. Like does it make sense? Like a projection of a city, kind of.
It was a real city. I'm pretty certain it's the phased thing. I think it's because the city was packed full with the population, and yeah, I'm pretty certain that when you phase these environments, there's no difference between you living in the one you're living in now and living in there. And I think that that's what's going on here. They've kind of mastered all this dimensional phasing stuff. We go in to this. There's an entranceway that's quite large, and there's no airlock, where there's nothing to separate out the outside environment to the inside environment. But now we're in this kind of more. It's not unsimilar to a mall, and even right to the front corner or the front there, not to my left, are gray aliens, tall gray aliens, and they're sitting like they're conversing, like hanging out, talking. And I'm in a leisure environment now. It's obviously quite packed. There's quite a lot of entities, and there is a feeling of leisure, and I've seen a lot of gowns, and I'm also quite enamored. But what's also really weird is no one was even paying attention to me. So you're not like, oh, who's the human? It's not. We'd expect these Star Wars moments of like everyone staring at you, and it's almost like they didn't care. Like they don't care who that guy is. And I'm with this humanoid, and then. Oh yeah, sorry. When we're walking down, he says, "Do you want to see my place?" I'm wanting to show my place, his place. As we're walking through the main entrance, there's this kind of like lightway. I call it a light pathway. You can stand on it, and it flies you through the city. Like you're phased, and then you can see the environment around you, but you're not. There's no sense of G-force. And so he steps on it first, and I step on it. The other element too, kind of like the crafts are alive. And they're aware of everything. They're aware of your impulses. The city was alive. So the city knew where we were going. So he's just desiring to go to his place. I didn't see him say anything to anybody or any instructions. So he gets on this light thing, light rail thing, on this light pathway thing. We're flying, and all of a sudden he's walking off and I'm walking off. And now we're in front of an elevator. And now we're in a physical elevator. So these weird contradictions. Like, why am I in front of a physical elevator? The elevator opens and we get in. Everything is benevolent. Everything is kind. There's no weird feelings. It is that frequency thing going on. So the frequency itself feels good. And then the transparency of everyone's feelings, there's no weirdness. And then the doors open up and we walk out, and there's a woman who comes to the right, and I can feel their relationship. So I can feel she's his mother, and she's welcoming me. Hello, welcome. And like she was in this environment already, and then she's coming around, and she's got black hair. And I'm really not looking at humans, or I'm not looking at people who are too different from humans. She had like a slightly like more defined jaw, and her eyes were a little bit more defined. Like her sockets around her eyes are a bit more defined, more than a human's would be. So she stuck out a little bit, but I'm not dealing with this. Didn't look unfamiliar to me as a human, and I'm in dog mode, like, oh my God. Like, and they live normal. They live like we do. It's basically when I'm freaking out. I thought maybe they would live in weird stasis, like aliens you see in the movie Aliens or something. And I'm looking at a condo, and it's not undifferent from it being a condo that a human would have. And they're looking out over the atmosphere, and I'm seeing from his vantage point the docks that we were on. So I can see that he's looking out into the atmosphere of Venus. This room feels molded. So instead of the hard walls, or like everything curved, the walls themselves curved, pretty much as if it was made from one material. The whole entire
like a 3D print, kind of something like that, maybe
like a 3D print for an entire condo,
a condo, yeah,
a condo 3D printed. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I think Lazar said that actually when he talks about that he feels like there was no right edges. I think he says this in the craft that he saw, that like 3D printed, I guess. Interesting.
Yeah, it's very normal. Many contactees, Whitley Strieber. Yeah, it's very normal to talk like this and report this. Everything's really intelligently made. And there are tables. There's a table and chair, and there's even a kind of a kitchen area. I didn't see a sink, but there's definitely like cupboards and things in the left. And I'm in this like hyper state, like, God, oh my God, and in shock that they live like us too, and everything's kind of like not too unsimilar from humans. And then there's a device to the left. It gets complex here, but said I want to see something. I want to show you something. Basically, is what he's saying. And I come over there, and it's this metal device. It's got some electrical fields going. So it's a circular metal device with electrical fields touching something, a metal device in the center, like a metal piece in the center, like a bullet is what I call it, like a metal object. I don't know. And he said, he said, watch this. And he pulled out a metal piece and then flung it, or like let go of it, and it zapped it flung to the metal piece in the center. And I didn't know what I was looking at, and I'm stumped by it. And he said, don't worry about it. So your civilization will get here soon. So I don't know what he was showing me. He didn't explain it. So it's as if like, here's this cool tech. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. You won't get that.
Was it like a magnet kind of? Like he let go and it like...
Yeah, but it popped the spark so the metal piece was a spark, or as if there was some kind of connecting magnetism to the metal piece in the center. And I actually, it may have had something to do with energy, like energy creation or energy magnetism or something. I really don't know. Yeah. The only reason I say that is because I have now seen something similar. And it was, one day I'll do hard research on that and maybe put all my thoughts on that together. But for the time being, all I knew was that I didn't know what he was showing me, and I was kind of stumped by it. So it's like, okay, great. Thanks for showing me this. Now we're going to go. And I'm kind of stunned. And I actually said in English to the mom, like, thanks for having me. And then there's uncomfort for her not knowing what I'm saying, the kind of weird translation thing. And she's saying bye, and I can feel her saying bye. And so, and then we get back into the elevator, and there's a weird like heart to heart moment here, because, I was like a distraught teenager, not knowing what he was doing, why he's traveling. And this humanoid maybe can feel that. I don't know. I was in an emotional, regardless of the vibration, I'm still in the emotional mind of my teenager self. I was living out of a car in a sleeping bag, and I was convinced that was the rest of my life. And here I'm seeing homes, and there's like almost the the paying for a bed or a home or something. And so I did have that kind of loss in me, and maybe he felt that, I don't know. So there's a heart to heart here where he's like, what you're doing is good for your society and you need to keep it up. Like you're doing the right thing and, keep it up. And, you're like, you'll be back here soon. So he's telling me I'll be back to Venus, which is interesting. And I don't believe I've ever gone back to Venus. Not yet anyway. And then that's it. So the door opens, we get out after this heart to heart. And he says, you go that way. Yeah, just go get on the light walkway and you go that way. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, just get on it and you go that way and you'll go that way. And I'm like, I don't get it. And he gets on the light way and he goes a different direction. So there's this moment where I'm alone on an alien city, on an alien planet by myself. And just, weird things like this are part of all this. So I'm kind of laughing to myself about it. And then I get on this device and I fired off into the city. And I'm traveling really fast. So again, there's the intelligence governing everything. So I don't even have to think or know what I'm doing. And then it's firing me up and I'm going further into the city and I can see through the ceilings are windows. So you can see out into other things. So I can see other buildings. I can see how tall some of the buildings are and you can see how far into the city we get. And then there's a distinct feeling of traveling, and then you move up. All of a sudden there's like a transporter that's taking me up. And then all of a sudden I'm materializing in a space and all the furniture is smaller for like a gray alien. And immediately I put it together. I'm in her place. I'm in the elder's place.
You're back in the thing. Wow.
No, I'm in the elder's home. This is her place.
Oh, I thought you meant you were back in like the original ship, but you're still in the city, but you're in the elder's home.
I've traveled far, and I didn't know where I was going. And I come out and it's, I walk out and it's the elder and it's this kind of like ecstatic, like, oh my God. And it's not just that it's cause it's a gray alien. So it should be weirder. It should be, they should be hanging from sacks and stuff. And it should be something bizarre and it's like, no, they shouldn't have condos. It doesn't make any sense. And she has a condo and she's coming out. And she's dressed in this weird uniform. It's black, a pure black uniform with holograms going through it, like into it. So it's like a weird 3D depth. And there was a clear impression that this was her relaxed clothing. So she wants to show me, right? And
it's her pajamas.
Yes, basically it's her pajamas. Yes, there's something weird. Like they wanted to show me things, and it is fascinating too. Like, I will get to know this entity, this creature, a lot more as the years progress. And I still am uncomfortable, but she's trying to make things comfortable is what she's doing, right? She keeps doing things to make me comfortable. And this is one of them, showing me where she lives. And so she's like, sit down, Jeff. Very much like a human would say. And then she has these couches, which are a little bit smaller than they are for us. But I sit on them and they have the same kind of material fabric as the bed that I sat on. She gives me like water or like something that had water in it. I didn't taste it, but she has an object. She has a cup too. And I say, what are you having? And she said, you can't have what I'm having. And she shows it to me. And it's got like a tomato paste look to it. Very interesting. I'll just make a side note here. The EBO scientist, there was a leak that happened, a geneticist leak who analyzed a gray alien body and put a whole thing on Reddit about it. All his stuff matched my contact. And one of them is that it doesn't look like gray aliens eat, but it looks like they drink. And it looks like they drink material that needs copper. And of course, tomato paste would be something that would be copper based. And of course she was drinking. And I'm like, this all matches my stuff. Anyway. So,
wow.
Yeah. Small details that you just think, okay, I'm going to tell people that I saw this. I don't know what it means. If this is working, I know what I saw, but I don't know, like, if people are going to think you're crazy, and you keep getting confirmations like this, right? That what you saw was real and it all matches. Yeah. So that's it. We sit. And so the entire time I've always been with them up to that point, 8 contact events and then the 5 childhood. Everything was like, go, 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 go. There's no reflection. You don't reflect on anything. You just know that the past contact events happened. And if they address a memory, they want it in the moment. Other than that, you're just supposed to you're interacting with them in the spot. So everything's very hands-on. And now I'm reflecting. And it's like, I can't believe we did this. And so I actually say, we did it. We made a me. Now, she defined it that there would be a persona created, another. And it was the me who saw his higher self. So it's the dual soul, but it's a persona. So the persona gets created, and then the guy who doesn't know he's having alien contact is drawing from that persona. So it's kind of how it got framed by her initially in the first contact event. And so I'm saying, we made another me. We did it. We did this. And she said, you did all the work. I just guided you along the right ways. That's it. Basically, I'm sitting with her, and I'm like, I can't believe this. And I'm able to look out, and she has a window that's facing Venus as well too, and in the middle of this environment. Basically, in the relaxation, I want to start looking at things, and I get up and I start wanting to see the environment, the room that she lives in. There was this chair there, and I ask, what is this chair? And she says, that's our entertainment. You can sit on it. You can try it if you want to. And then I basically sit in this chair. And what it is, there's a band across, it's like I guess like a dentist chair. Same idea, except it has you don't lean back. But it's very lounge-like. And it was designed for her, so it's tight. And then it's got this band that comes out over your eyes. And the moment I sat on it, it turns on, and these 3D images come out that interact with my brain. And it is like they go right to the depth of your brain. And it's obviously not meant for me, it's meant for her. And I feel like I'm gonna puke. I feel like it's made me immediately nauseous. And I'm like, oh, and I try to get off the thing, and it's kind of a comical moment where I'm like, that's your entertainment? She's like, different things affect us than you. You know, that's basically different things affect us. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And that's it. It's like, you got to see it. Okay, great. You got to hang out. Time to go back. And I keep thinking it's the end. Okay, this is it. I'll never see her again. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I look around to see her one more time. I'm trying to absorb the moment. I get back in the transporter, and she says, we'll see you again. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And then I'm fired down. So there's no explanation for it. I keep assuming, like, I'm not clear why they're in my life anymore at this point. We did this experiment. I agreed to this thing. We did it. Now, why are you still in my life? That's it. I'm back on this railway, and I pop out, and then I'm on a raised portion of it so I can look down, and there's a ramp that takes you down, and then there's entities all over the place, and they're lounging, and there's like, I see like a gray alien on a table on a hologram. I see like groups of them moving, like maybe humanoids, and I saw other aliens that I didn't recognize at the time, but I now consider to be the mantis species. And then the humanoid is right to my left here, and he's hanging out talking to other humanoids. So they're all conversing. This is their social environment. And then I come out, and he sees me, and come out of the light walkway. And then he sees me, and it's like, time to go back. He's like, okay, let's go back. So then we get back on the light walkway, and we make our way to the pad where the UFO is. We start walking down, and actually I ask him his name. And what's your name? And I never learn anybody's names. And he actually says, we don't have names like you have names. Very interesting, because the one thing that connects all the contactees I know is that all the entities never had names. They all just have telepathic signatures because they're all living in this non-verbal environment or telepathic environment. So very interesting. And that's that. We walk to the end of the pathway. This time he drives the craft back, and there is a real feeling of closing this off and getting you back home. And so, yeah, he drives the craft, flies it back. We pass the base station, and he takes me back to Hornby Island. Basically, the memories get a bit fuzzy, but whatever happens, I get dropped off, and I'm put back into the tent. And that's when I'm pretty convinced I woke up from that moment, and they were here. Basically, is the whole feeling, and the discomfort. Actually, it's really interesting. I was uncomfortable from the biological moment that I had with the elder. So the dream ends up being disturbing, and I'm not feeling amazed. Oh, I won't know about Venus. The whole thing will get buried. All that's left is this discomfort, and it's an uncomfortable feeling. I felt very disturbed by my dream. That I said that they were here, like they were here, but it's from a dream, and that was disturbing. And that was always something that lingered in me, was how weird that dream was.
It felt like a negative experience, it sounds like. That was the overall sentiment at when you were back on the island?
I don't like using the word negative, but disturbing, because disturbing is just when you're outside your realm of comfort.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I was negative, because negative would be maybe fear-based. I would say that I was put into uncomfortable scenarios, and that is exactly the impression of
That's
what the
what
dream
happened.
was. Yeah.
You know, this is so fascinating because, you know, I actually ordered your book. I just haven't received it yet. I ordered off of Amazon. So I'm actually going on vacation in about a week, and I plan on reading it on vacation.
Awesome. Thanks for buying the book. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. But I'm not super familiar with your story, and hearing you talk about it, it's this weird sense where what the words that are coming out of your mouth sound absurd. They sound like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, like this is, you're
Yeah.
going on Venus. Like, are you?
Yeah, I know.
This can't be real. It's like,
Yeah, I know.
what
I know.
one
know.
part of it.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is just, there's this like undertone of truth. Like there's this undertone of like, this all makes sense. Like what you're saying, there's so many details, and it's everything you're saying is just, like you said, some of it, I'm not very read up on my, contactee. Like, I know a couple, I know like Travis Walton's story and things like that, but there's this common denominator and the sense of truth that just rings true with your story. It's so fascinating.
That's great, because I have that. My whole thing was that I was not an aliens and UFOs guy. Like, I was not an aliens and UFO guy. I was not. That's just, I looked into Whitley Strieber's story as a teenager, and then I had that thing happen. I never got into aliens. I didn't study this stuff. It ended from there. Once I went to Toronto and met my wife, all of that kind of weirdness ended. I just focused on being a musician, on focusing on real life, and I had a guru, and that's how it ended. I didn't go back into this stuff. It was totally weird for me. It was strange for me. I know that absurdity so well because I have that in me still. I still have it in me. As I'm talking out, I'm like, I know this is going to sound really crazy, everybody, but, you got it. So I'm aware of that absurdity of it.
Yeah, it's absurd. But like I said, there's this, it like rings true in this weird sense that I can't even find the words probably to describe it. But
yeah, I think you get it, and I think I hear you, and I appreciate that, and you're totally right, because it does make sense. That's the craziest part about it. Everything, all the intentions that happened, all the tiny things that happened, fit into a picture about why they did what they did, and then my behaviors also fit into a picture about why I behaved the way I did, and for it to be so detailed is so, and like. Don't forget, like, this is also me being like, did this really happen to me? Like, I'm also of the same mind, but because there's a present moment experience where I'm these cracks are in my environment, and then there's these weird moments where they're able to tell me things and communicate to me, and then to actually have real things that happened to me in my past that were bizarre. It was really shocking to me how they were hiding the memories. So I was still in a space where the memories were coming out. The first year, an entire year. Of like, what? Why am I saying that happened to me? I would go back. No, there's no way that happened to me. And then you're like, no, man, I really think that happened. And then you got these memories, and all of a sudden, and what you don't want to do either when you're contacting, you have the degree that I had, you get insecure about your memories. So I don't want to research it. I don't want to research other people's contacts because I get nervous to be like, oh, no, I hear gray aliens don't go to Venus. Oh my God. Someone's contact event told them there's no such thing as aliens on Venus. And then you have this contact event in your memory. You distrust yourself. Then you just don't want to talk about it. So instead, I didn't research anything. I got all my memories up together, and then I started talking about it publicly. And then when I started doing that, and I had a researcher right there at the moment when it happened, Ian Halling, who's with Linda Moulton Howe, but he was there when I'm going public with everything. And then I started doing all my research. And then it turned out, aliens, the white room was real. Because I now met another contact who's been to the same room who saw orbs spinning as well too. So all these tiny, tiny details start aligning and matching up. That just to this day are like, it's absurd, but it actually is real. So it's so crazy. Yeah. I'm in my own personal environment. I have people who say that because they're not into aliens, and you need to go down this rabbit hole to understand the aliens can split your mind. That alone is too much for people. And why didn't you remember this when you were 16? And they can't also understand too, like, how can they do something so extreme, show you the afterlife, and you not know about it? And those things are really, and those are hard for me to rectify too. I knew it happened because of the linear progress, and everything matched up. And not just that, she said, we'll develop a persona in the first contact event. And here I am, my 8th contact event, and we're still talking about the thing we talked about in the first contact event. So the way it all links together is phenomenal. It's mind bending how it all links. It's because it's all real. It's all real events that occurred, but it doesn't make sense if you don't understand some of these things that contactees understand, or experiencers understand, or researchers understand. And then otherwise, it just sounds like a fanciful, made-up story. And if you can't quite wrap your head around aliens can break time, stop time, they can, split minds, they have consciousness tech, they have this is magic beyond magic. It's not Star Trek, it's not Star Wars. In fact, I kind of joke that Star Wars and Star Trek did us a disservice because this is so far more reaching than that is. This is about the consciousness tech. Like, we don't even have ways of framing how it could even be real. How can you be turned into an orb in a room, right? And so all these ideas are not making sense to us, and yet they are real and they're existing. And so, and that's in part why I actually am on the alarm about disclosure. No, we're not ready. We don't have the frame of references for half the stuff. And when we start learning that these are the real elements to it, I know people who were mad at me for saying this stuff. Like, how dare you say that this could happen to you? And what it does is it breaks frames of references of reality for people. And then they are angry, actually. That's what happens. When people get their frame of reference broken, they're not excited to learn something new. They say, get lost. So disclosure is filled with this challenge about the nature of what we think is the nature of reality. So,
yeah, that's interesting that you feel that way. I would probably, my gut would tell me that you would be the opposite, because you almost would want disclosure to happen, because if it does and it sheds light onto your experience, it's kind of, so there's people maybe even around you, or people, trolls on the internet or whatever it may be, that said, yeah, right, man. You'd be like, well, did you know that I was right all along? I would imagine you would want that justification. So I find it interesting that you are like apprehensive about it.
Yeah, no, I do for myself, but the world is not. It's not going to go well, and I know that from my personal experience already. But of course, yeah. Actually, the whole point I kind of say is it's obvious to me the timing of it, how this all unfolded. It's obvious to me that this was for disclosure. Also, like, you just can't give something this extreme to somebody and not have it get resolved in his lifetime. So it has me confident that my family and friends will actually know that this, I have some family who's like, okay, we believe you because we trust you, but there are definitely friends who can't handle it and it's too much for them. And then you're stuck in a weird position where you're analyzing your life and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. And that's what makes me believe, because 2017 was when the UFO stuff started happening in the public, and 2019 was when my memories came out. The timing of it for me was very obvious because I didn't really pay attention to 2017, and I didn't really think too much about it. So I didn't really analyze that or care too much about it, and I didn't really think of anything about it. And when 2019 came around, my memory started unraveling, and I started to go down this rabbit hole, starting to research about the year after all the memories came out and start talking about it publicly, that I start realizing, oh, wait a minute, this is all very interesting the way this is unfolding, and it's looking like my content is assisting or helping this process of disclosure. And only now, 5 years in, am I clear it's helping experiencers, it's helping contactees. Because a lot of people have had these experiences as well too, and they can't digest them or understand the bigger picture of things. So you're very right. I do want disclosure for that reason. But the disruption is going to be, it goes down before it goes up. That's what I'm saying. And it's going to be, there's going to be trauma involved, and there's going to be shock involved on the human global scale. I think part of the reason there hasn't been disclosure is because it's unpredictable what humans could do. And I really do think that that's actually a part of still what's going to happen. It's unpredictable. There's no way that society just embraces this. There are going to be a whole bunch of people who will not want to embrace it. And then that might cause, something very wrong for humans to choose something very, very dangerous.
Even if you take a step back from your story and just look at where we are now with the UAP thing, and I know just 2 days ago there was that other UAP hearing where Elizondo and there's other witnesses and stuff that came out, and to me it was a little bit underwhelming, if I'm being honest, just because
of course, for us who are in the know,
I was like, okay, nothing really new was said. But to the public, the people that are just the layperson that doesn't really follow this topic too much, there's been news articles, aliens hiding in our oceans and this and that, and I go to work every day and I work with people that don't follow this, as I'm sure you do, and listeners to this podcast probably do, and everyone's like, yeah, they probably are. There probably are aliens, and they're probably it's so they're probably here, no big deal. And I see your point for sure about that. I think it's a concern of mine as well, that are people going to start to lose their mind a little bit and freak out if they really know what's going on? But the other part of me is I don't even know if anyone would care. Instagram is still going to exist, and there's still going to be, Simpsons season 49 that's going to come out or whatever. Life's going to go on as we probably know it. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. I mean, maybe once disclosure happens, things will change, and I don't know. There is definitely unknown.
Yeah. So I saw the afterlife on an alien spacecraft. Both Ross Colfort now and Bob Bigelow. So I went public with saying that first. July 5th, 2020 is when I first went public with it. I got the video on my YouTube channel, and then these guys came out saying it, that the phenomenon is associated with the afterlife. That's just even saying something like that could be possible. Well, I keep saying it's going to verify it's real to the scientific T. And I was actually making the argument disclosure is going to be insane. It's going to be crazy. And they're like, no, it's going to be this joyful time. We're all going to learn, and they're all spiritual. I'm like, do you have any idea that we're going to prove the afterlife is real? And she said, well, a lot of people believe in the afterlife. I'm like, dude, belief is not the same as that you committed your life to a career that has no value to all the other thousands of lives you'll continue having. You've done nothing for your life. If you really think about it, all the people who've done nothing with their lives here's the other part too. We're damaging the planet. We're coming back. You don't just die, you come back. Why are you doing what you're doing then? And everything has a repercussion. And the problem is we're in the unknown. And also there's a lot of damage here, or danger. The religious people might say it's valid then. Hell might be true for them. Right? So then it could go in some weird twisty ways that and the problem is that humans, we don't have our own faculty to verify these things, while the aliens do. And so that's why I've actually always said I'm not convinced disclosure can happen in our society. It happens in their society. So if my whole story is that they're coming and they're planning on merging with us, and when you have their tech, you can see what your past lives are, what it's like to be the afterlife, and you can still have to be a human and live out your day. But then you have access to that awareness, or access to things that can help understand what to do with that awareness. But until then, the human mind is an atomic bomb in and of itself. And it can go, people have, what's happening now is that the afterlife being verified, people are using it as a reason to believe in Prison Planet. So they're making it even worse than it ever could be. Oh yeah, the purpose of existence is to be a slave to the birth and death life cycle. Well, there's nothing worse you could do for your life. But say that you're just a slave. You can't escape it. You're a slave forever. And so they've just worded and twisted all this stuff up. We need their tech to do it, but we can't handle it until we are at a certain level of consciousness. And when you're fighting about it, you can't be at that level of consciousness. So it's a weird gamble and weird problem going on that I feel maybe some of the people in disclosure, or people who are part of this, back in the early decades maybe knew some of these details of how challenging it is to bring some of this forward.
Yeah. Well said. Well, I think I think I have one more question for you. What do you think about, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but the idea of aliens manipulating our DNA or basically creating us from apes and accelerating our evolution, and then also the idea that these alien beings are us from the future that have maybe developed some sort of time machine, or they're coming back, like time traveling, the time traveling theory. Where do you land on both of those concepts?
Yeah, I'm pretty solid on those. They're not from Earth's. They're not from our future. So they showed me, and it answers everything. And the FBI actually knew this back in 1947, and there's a document, and it matches. They are from an alternate Earth. So the crazy, this is why there's no disclosure. But the problem is that world is coming. That's why. So they're coming. And so the dimensions, when people pass on into the afterlife, there's all this data now about it. Whether it's near-death experiences, which are hundreds and hundreds, in some cases, some doctors have thousands of reports. And then there's also been this near-death regression thing going on. So Michael Newton, PhD, did a whole thing on between life regressions. He has a really good book, Journey of Souls. And he's done hundreds of cases. Dolores Cannon can fit into that picture as well, too. And a lot of people see layers in the afterlife, dimensional field layers, as if they're like Aurora Borealis in the background. And I saw that too in the afterlife when I was in the light room. And the aliens showed me that those are astral planes. And if you go through one, the physical environments are still there. So like Earth is still an Earth, but it's a different Earth. It's like the astral plane is a frequency. And so the moon is still a moon, but it might have a different type of society on it, or a different type of environment on it. They are coming from an astral plane of Earths that is not Earth. It's an alternate reality Earth. And they are not physical there. They're not carnate. They're like paranormal entities. They're like paranormal frequency entities. And that's like plasma. Actually, they're plasma entities is what I call them. But when you see it, and I saw it because they showed it to me, it's in the future. And so the trick is that so this connects, that's the future part. And so there's this weird, baffling craziness to it. Astral planes, multiple Earths, alternate reality Earths, future Earths, plasma dimension. It's so crazy. It's too much. It's just too much.
It is, but Michio Kaku, I think, even stated, I heard him do like a talk saying that, like, mathematically, I think he said there's like 7 dimensions. I don't say they've proved it, but like mathematically, he says that like it's definitely in the realm of possibility, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah, and we're getting that physics now, I guess, to understand that.
Yeah.
So about the other element to this then, how it all lines up for me. So yeah, they did make us. There was gray aliens alone, or maybe the mantis controller species. There's a whole other controller mantis species that's above all this. That kind of seems to be the main one in charge. And he may have been the one responsible for making us, and the Greys helped. There may have been some other humanoid species too, I don't know. But some version of that is true, where we are a genetically engineered species. But there's something that is undeniably accurate and true about my contact events that says something about the nature of reality. A thing that all the lofty vision about reality, spiritually, that we all die and go to a beautiful realm of love and light, and that there's unity, and that's all connected, and that the purpose of existence is to grow and to develop and to maybe find our own higher self and embody it and have self-realization, is all real, true, and accurate. And God is actually real. The unified field force of conscious awareness is real. So then this guy, the mantis species, maybe they're kind of like intermediaries, maybe godlets, if you will. They know what grows the universe. And they actually have a whole thing behind it where they understand more about what we're doing to the unified field. We're actually bringing awareness to the unified field. We do. Like our existence brings awareness to the unified field. And they serve this kind of like larger perspective. And they may actually be scientific about it. So there might be the kind of dual side where there's a natural love, God, heaven, whatever you want to call it, process going on that is real and natural. And then they actually have their own experiments, things going on alongside of it. There's a natural process that they just let and they don't touch. That didn't have its own thing, but then they start planting seeds about it. So then, they'll plant a seed for a brain that will have a frame of reference that will cut off some of that awareness. So then we have a type of struggle that develops the unified field in a way that is very unique, so much so that our own higher self says when it's pulled out of it, wait a minute, that was good for me. So it wants you back. So it keeps you back into the universal cycle. And then they're just acting as intermediaries to help build a soul body, a body for the soul to go into that will help develop this grander unified field. The bottom line is that it's a stage. The earth is a stage with the whole point being consciousness. The whole universe is about consciousness for the purpose of consciousness. And so these physical dimensions are for stages. And this is just a stage. And they made you a play. They gave you a character, a body. And then we go out living out like it's all real for the purpose of believing it's real. And the point is what's happening now is the stage is burning down. And he's taking charge and saying, yeah, we're not going to make sure it's burning down, and we're bringing those guys in, and we're switching things up, and it's a new era. We're making a new stage, is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, big picture
wow.
stuff.
Again, everything you say is just like, it just rings so true. I don't know what it is. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, well, and I've been with them for a while, so I can, iron these things out.
You can vouch.
I can vouch, and I can talk to them still. I know it sounds crazy. That sounds crazy. I still say I have trouble with some of the absurdity myself. I won't say some of the absurdity in public, but sometimes I get away with saying it.
Yeah. But, I mean, again, everything sounds crazy until it's proven true. That's kind of my whole philosophy with everything here. And even, Greer and that, like the CE5 stuff with consciousness and like meditation and how these orbs show up. I don't know too much about that, but I know that that's a thing. And again, there seems to be all these connections with all these different experiencers and these different like theories. Like it definitely feels like we're on the verge of something, and what you're also saying that as well. Like I love what you said about the stage. That's a really interesting way to look at it. I think I agree with that. It seems like that would make sense. We even as a human species have developed things like CRISPR. You want a baby with brown eyes and blonde hair and 6'4" and whatever. Sure, we could do that for you, no problem. And if I could see us advancing 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, and if we are able to travel to another world, let's say, and we find this creature that we don't know what it is, and where do we identify it? Could we manipulate this DNA a little bit to create something else? 100% we would do that. And who's to say that there's not another species out there from another astral plane or another whatever that is more advanced that's doing the same thing to us? It makes sense.
Yeah,
it really does.
And we just might not see it, but I'm pretty certain in the after realm, there's more to your struggle than you think there is. And that's what's really obvious, even in the research for the NDE research. There's something really significant about you, that what we would call suffering, and learning to not feel like it's suffering, to be like, okay, there's a challenge. I'm going to take that challenge on. And you bring character and spirit, and you're doing something much more bigger than you realize. And that's, and there's something going on in the other dimensions that get affected by your ability to bring in your spirit for a moment. And whatever that is, you're breaking your limitation, or most people, don't we also like feel really amazing when something awful has happened to someone, and then we see them rise up out of it? Like even we are like, as humans, we're like, yeah, that person. And we feel great for that. Yeah, we feel great for them. And there's something I think we know intuitively that they're doing something right, and they're doing it well. And there's something grander happening in the other field about that event,
Man, what a ride. Every time I talk to Jeff, I feel like I walk away questioning everything I thought I knew about reality. Whether you believe his story or not, there's no denying the sheer depth and consistency of his experiences. And honestly, with everything coming out lately, from whistleblowers to the stuff being revealed in government hearings, it's getting harder and harder to just dismiss stories like his. Believe it or not, there's actually more to Jeff's story. I spoke with him a second time, and there's still about 3 hours of content that I have to edit still. So the game plan is the same as last time. Next episode will be a story that's not Jeff's. And then the following week will be part 3. There may even be a part 4, but we'll see. I would really love to hear what you guys think about Jeff's story. So leave a comment on Instagram or even TikTok if it's not shut down again, and let's talk about it. And if you've got your own story of high strangeness, reach out. I want to hear it. You can send us an email at stories@closeencounterclub.com. If you really want to support this show, the best thing you can do is to leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It goes a really long way. This episode was produced and edited by Justin Gearhart, mixed and mastered by Brett Jarvis. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time on the Close Encounter Club.